My name is Alex Peterson from the Management of Complex Systems Department at UC Merced in the Ernest and Gallo School of Management, asterisk. I'll explain more about that later. And today I'm going to talk about scenarios in which specific collaborations represent strategic configurations. The talk will consist of two parts, addressing the benefits of strategic collaboration from the individual and organizational perspectives. To motivate these two perspectives, on the left is the collaboration network of Paul Erdos, who many are familiar with, the quintessential collaborator who, despite publishing in small groups, amassed an enormous collaboration network comprising 500 or more collaborators across his 1,500 or more papers. On the right is this ecosystem of computer science and biology researchers and the rich interface between them, which fostered the genomics revolution in the early 1990s. First, a bit of background concerning the motivations for pursuing research on collaboration and success, which derives from early efforts of my grad school mentors to understand the fundamental quantitative scaling patterns relating firm size and growth fluctuations for firms and sectors of widely varying sizes. Much of this empirical work derives, in fact, from collaboration between complex systems and management scholars, with the objective to develop parsimonious stochastic models for understanding firm growth. But with the global financial crisis emerging in 2008, the question quickly turned to the implications of interconnected economic systems, as highlighted by Schweitzer and colleagues in this timely science article in 2009, followed up by economists such as Acemoglu, regarding the network origins of aggregate fluctuations. Let me further highlight this work by Amaral et al., which develops a stochastic firm growth model that explores the implications of complex internal structure of units, for example firms, and its subunits, for example firm subdivisions. In this model, the subunits develop according to proportional growth, a random multiplicative model, and to quote the authors, the model dynamically builds a diversified, multi-divisional structure, reproducing the fact that a typical firm passes through a series of changes in organizational, growing from a single product, single plant firm to a multi-divisional, multi-product firm. And so the reason I bring up this foundational work is twofold. First, as highlighted here in the author byline, what we have is a cross-disciplinary collaboration between finance and physics. And second, because highlighted here in this figure 1 schematic, is this idea that they explore firms of minimum size 2. So this is a model for organizations with non-trivial size. And so the question is, what about this size limit S minimum goes to 1? Indeed, the small size limit S going to 1 is a good approximation of an academic career, one that is embedded in a much more flat organizational profile, but nevertheless features several of the fundamental growth factors, those that are endogenous, exogenous, and idiosyncratic with respect to how the career grows. And these are some of the topics addressed in these papers. And so in this first part of the talk, I present the evolution of collaboration from an ego perspective. And its motivations shown here are 3 snapshots of Erdős's ego collaboration network at career ages 10, 30 years, and present day, whereby the asterisk indicates that even 12 years after his death, Erdős was still publishing. How's that possible? Well, likely a former colleague found a napkin with a back-of-the-envelope calculation that upon publication conveniently increased the Erdős number. But more importantly here are the 4-click of Erdős, Vaudry, Schelp, and Rousseau, which represents a good example of super ties. Ties of such strength and duration that they can't be explained by random chance, but rather represent something more like a long-lasting relationship, a partnership. Let me begin with this schematic, which illustrates how science careers are embedded in a co-evolving system of knowledge, institutions, and researchers, which are driven by and subsequently drive human, intellectual, and social capital formation. Indeed, this dichotomy of collective and individual behavioral processes are what really makes this system both challenging and interesting. After all, we're talking about competitive and passionate people with long-term goals and adaptive strategic behavior. Moreover, these are highly dynamic networks with high rates of entry and exit of nodes and links, and characteristic variability in their life cycles. For instance, considering the nodes representing publications in the citation network below, shown to the right are empirical annual citation time series for articles of varying total citation impact, indicating that even within individual careers, there is wide variation in the citation life cycle and cited half-life. Similarly, the links representing collaborations are also highly dynamic, with most collaborations lasting just a couple years or publications, such as represented by the green curve shown above, representing collaboration that decays rapidly over time after its first appearance. Juxtaposed with this is the red curve, representing collaborations in the highest quartile of intensity, which decays much more slowly and occasionally lasts an entire lifetime. In this way, the variation in collaboration life cycle, and as an analogy to the life cycle of citations that we are probably more familiar with, also exhibit dynamics characterized by a complex dichotomy of burstiness and persistence. Regarding the high-intensity collaborations, a natural question arises regarding a researcher's productive output. Is there a measurable competitive advantage associated with heavily investing in a select group of research partners? In support of this, shown here is a summary of tantalizing evidence that humans maintain relationships of varying intensity in order to manage the complexity of their social environment, with the famous Dunbar's number representing the maximum number of friends an individual is likely to maintain at any given point in time. Yet within that group of roughly 150, one can likely define roughly 50 good friends, and within that group, roughly 12 to 15 close relationships, and within that select group, 3 to 5 more intimate relationships, which are the analog of academic superties analyzed in the results that I'm about to present. So indeed, in what follows, we test the hypothesis that articles featuring a given researcher's superties are of higher quality, here proxied by normalized citation counts, owing to the beneficial characteristics of strong academic collaborations. Some of those beneficial characteristics being higher levels of trust, conviction, experience, skill complementarity, additional benefits deriving from the effective collocation across 2 or more regions, resulting in basically a larger formal and informal social network, higher levels of support, reputation spillovers, and in particular, risk and profit sharing. Indeed, what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. And so it appears as though even the extreme strategies can be quite rewarding. To give you an idea of these 2 extreme strategies, here are 2 examples from within the set of 100 top-cited cell biologists. One of the most extreme cases of collaboration styles you could find. Michael Brown and Joseph Goldstein, recipients of the 1985 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, shared 95% of their articles with each other. So this is a binary star system which is characterized by these inseparable researchers. Conversely, we find also the success of the solo artist strategy, Marilyn Kozak, who, while was much less productive as her counterparts, nevertheless featured 59 of her 70 publications as a solo author. Hence, the egocentric perspective reveals a wide range of collaboration strategies. To emphasize the variation in collaboration profiles, shown are the collaboration trajectories for two Nobelists. The black time series in each panel shows the total number of publications of each Nobelist. Each additional colored time series indicates a single collaborator, with Kij representing the cumulative number of articles they shared by year. The horizontal dashed line indicates a researcher-specific threshold distinguishing the very intense collaborators of each. These are the superties, which I will define shortly. As you can see, Elizabeth Blackburn on the top panel exhibits a steady increase in collaborators across the career, with several becoming superties later. Contrariwise, the binary system of Goldstein and Brown exhibits many collaborators distributed across the entire career, but with few reaching the levels shared by each with the other. Shown here is a complementary visualization of the collaboration profile that incorporates the net productivity and citation impact associated with each collaborator, useful for identifying major shifts in the career. In particular, shown here is the profile of Sir Andre Geim, winner of the 2010 Nobel Prize for his foundational work on graphene, together with his supertie, Novoselov. Each of the horizontal lollipops on the right starts with the first collaboration with Geim and terminates with the most recent observed collaboration for each of his collaborators across his career. Circle size at the terminus indicates the number of co-citations, and the circle color indicates their total publications together. The lollipops are then sorted in terms of entry into Geim's ego network. Hence, what this visualization identifies is the large reorganization of Geim's collaboration network following his move from the Netherlands to the UK in 2000. Fortunately for him, he decided to bring his then postdoc Novoselov with him, along with his real-life partner, Irina Grigorieva. As such, this profile highlights the churning of collaboration ties associated with major life events through the life course. Three key measures illustrated here are the duration of the collaboration, given by L, the intensity given by K, and the net citation impact indicated by capital C. Now I will define the criteria for identifying superties based upon extreme value statistics. The two plots shown above are the distributions of scaled author intensity, X, which is given by the number of co-publications for any ego co-author pair, represented by capital K, normalized by the mean K value for each central author, or ego. This scaled co-author intensity appropriately accounts for the variation in collaboration patterns across individuals and disciplines, since we're dealing with researchers from biology and physics. The cumulative distributions as shown indicate an exponential distribution of co-author intensity. Based upon this knowledge, we use extreme value estimator to calculate the extreme collaboration threshold, above which we only expect to find one observation for any given ego author. Due to the properties of the exponential distribution, this supertie threshold corresponds to a rescaling of the mean co-author intensity, less 1, multiplied by the log of the total number of distinct authors that any given ego has over their career, given by S. Hence, in other words, this estimator identifies the co-authors whose intensity cannot be explained by the endogenous exponential variation in collaboration intensities observed across hundreds of researchers. Here I provide an example of this supertie threshold in the case of a legendary, fervent collaborator and complex system scientist, Gene Stanley, using data through 2010. Shown to the right is the ranked list of collaborators, many of whose names you'll likely recognize from earlier. And shown on the left is the rank citation or rank publication profile of these same co-authors. The horizontal blue line indicates the average number of articles published with Gene Stanley among his co-authors. It's roughly 7 papers. Whereas the gray line above that indicates the super tie threshold of roughly 36 papers, distinguishing the top 10 co-authors and super ties of Gene Stanley. Hence, roughly 2% or 1 in 50 of Gene's co-authors qualify as super ties. Compared to the average, the fraction of co-authors that are super ties on average is 1 in 25 in our sample. Conversely, the fraction of publications that include a super tie is on average 50%. A quick description of the data underlying the results, which are based upon 473 researcher profiles using article-level citation data from the Web of Science. These researchers are further separated into 4 groups of roughly equal size: biologists and physicists. Within each of those 2 domains, profiles are categorized as either top-cited, for example, as characteristic of Nobel Prize winners, or an appropriate control set of productive but not highly cited researchers. On average, biologists in the study had roughly 17 super ties, and physicists in the study had roughly 7 super ties each. And shown are various types of measures at the individual, team, and career level for proxying the strength and duration of collaborations. In order to identify the citation advantage associated with super ties, we used a multivariate regression framework using author fixed effects to account for time invariant characteristics of each researcher in our sample. The dependent variable in our model is a logarithmically normalized citation value for each article, which maps the citation value onto a stable z statistic independent of the publication year, which is thus appropriate for comparing the citation impact of articles from different time periods. The main article level indicator variable is given by R, which takes the value 1 if there is at least 1 co-author who is a super tie and 0 otherwise. The publication sample was remarkably well balanced, with half of the observations corresponding to R equals 1. Notably, this hierarchical specification includes an author-specific constant or intercept, beta sub I, meaning that coefficients are measured net of each author's mean citation value. Consequently, a significant beta sub R is indicative of causal channels connecting super ties and highly cited research outcomes. At the bottom is shown the model specification, including various other author and article level controls. Our results indicate a significant and positive advantage associated with super ties, a result that leverages a clear counterfactual by implementing a hierarchical model that implicitly compares those articles with to those articles without a super tie for the same author. We tested the robustness of these results in 10,000 placebo models in which we shuffled the super tie indicator variable across the dataset and reran the regression, the results of which additionally indicate that our estimate of the super tie coefficient cannot be explained by random chance. We estimated the beta sub R value of roughly 0.2, which when put into real terms corresponds to a roughly 20% citation increase at the publication level. This is net of each researcher's own mean citation baseline, and means that this correlation is highly attributable to super ties. In addition to the mechanisms based around skill complementarity, trust, conviction, commitment, experience, collocation, moral support, and risk and profit sharing, Alternative explanations include self-citation between superties and the reputation premium associated with having a larger collaboration radius, which we nevertheless controlled for by including the number of co-authors per paper and also the total number of co-authors, the collaboration radius, S.
In summary, this study explored collaboration from the individual's perspective, thereby highlighting how social capital investment, underlying academic career growth, is characterized by a high turnover rate juxtaposed with surprisingly frequent supertie life partners. In particular, by tracking the entry and exit of collaborative partnerships across the career, we showed how researchers transition from pursuer to attractor of new collaborative opportunities. The strongest academic partnerships represent strategic configurations that leverage division and diversity of labor, breadth and depth of expertise, and in particular risk and reward sharing, which is supported by the present kind of academic reward system, which doesn't necessarily divide credit for co-production. In addition to measuring the citation premium associated with investing in super ties, we also reveal additional insights into the dynamics and heterogeneity of collaboration. Regarding the prevalence of weak ties across the roughly 500 researchers that we analyzed, we found that on average, 60 to 80% of each researcher's collaborators, that collaboration lasted just roughly a year, so the minimum time period. Yet within the subset of repeat collaborations, and focusing on those that lasted more than 2 years, roughly 2/3 of these collaborations last less than a scientist's average duration, which is roughly 5 years. So most ties are weak and short. Nevertheless, 1% of these collaborations, on average, lasted roughly 20 years, or 4 times the average duration across all these sciences. In particular, thinking about the disciplinary differences, 9% of the biologists we analyzed and roughly 20% of the physicists we analyzed shared 50% or more of their publications with their top collaborator. This has clear implications for early stage researchers. Find a life partner, start dancing, and start exploring the strategic configurations that are made possible by partnership.
In the second part of this talk, I will discuss recent results regarding cross-disciplinary collaboration. The definition of cross-disciplinary scholarship that we adopt is research demanding expertise from at least 2 distinct disciplines. Hence, this work seeks to better understand the dynamics and impact of cross-disciplinary collaboration by focusing on the groundbreaking research activity generated by the Human Genome Project in the United States, which started in the early 1990s. We recreated this ecosystem of biology and computing scientists by using faculty rosters from top 80 biology and computing departments in the United States. Based upon this researcher-centric dataset, we then tracked collaboration among these scholars within their home discipline and across disciplines. Hence, in this schematic, researcher A and C are cross-disciplinary because they each feature a publication including the other from the opposite domain. Shown here is the evolution of the collaboration network. Notice the increasing prevalence of cross-disciplinary scholars and the rich interface for knowledge sharing they develop. This interface also represents a social bridge by which researchers transition from being traditional CS scholars into bioinformatics leaders. We applied econometric methods to assess the impact of cross-disciplinary activity on career and project level outcomes. Model 0 above looked at the aggregate level of careers, whereas models 1 through 3 used publication level information and an author fixed effect specification to test for citation premium at the article level. Models 1 through 3 become progressively stricter. In the final model, we apply a course matching approach within author profiles. The career level model 0 indicates that scholars with 10% of collaborators who are cross-disciplinary are cited 6% more over their life course than monodisciplinary scholars from the same discipline. The article level models show that cross-disciplinary articles are cited 20% more than their monodisciplinary counterfactuals, even when counterfactual observations are matched on the same author as in Model 3. This researcher network highlights the most central researchers in the ecosystem, highlighting the mobility of several CS faculty who forged across the bridge to become elite faculty in the receiving discipline. One clear success factor is being able to speak a common language. Based on bits on the one hand and ATCs and Gs on the other hand, we hypothesize that this common language helped to overcome other cultural barriers and to establish a highly functional marriage. The Human Genome Project championed what we call the Consortium science model, whereby teams of teams coalesce around common objectives, in particular, sharing benefits equitably within and beyond institutional boundaries. It took 13 years from start to finish to map just a single human's genome. Yet nowadays, anyone can mail a bit of spit and get a comprehensive genetic analysis back in a few months. Wow! In my introduction, I mentioned how collaboration is a means to achieve successful configurations, in particular those in which the form follows function, or in other words, when the design strategically addresses a target problem. As such, what types of strategic collaborations will help us address our planet and society's beckoning problems? By way of motivation, this article in 2006 by my colleague Leroy Westerling, which was featured on the cover of Science, shows a corona fire, the likes of which excite a very primitive fear if you've ever seen one. But nonetheless, some species, including this giant sequoia, have adapted to such extreme phenomena, even incorporating them into their germination life cycle in such a way that cones containing seeds are activated during fires. This adaptation is form-following function at its best. The problem facing these and other species worldwide is that the timescale of change due to anthropogenic forcing is outpacing the adaptation timescale. Such problems that originate at the increasing intersection of human and natural systems are the type of grand challenges that my colleagues in the Management of Complex Systems Department at UC Merced are aiming to tackle. And to foster the conditions for successful configurations, we are in the process of designing a new school of management around cross-disciplinarity. The Gallo Management School Initiative, comprised of the union of 3 existing departments of complex systems, economics, and cognitive and information sciences, represents a configuration designed for addressing 21st century grand challenges that emerge at the intersection of coupled human and environmental systems. The links spanning the center of this faculty-faculty network represent cross-cutting, cross-disciplinary opportunities that together provide a framework for convergent science in the spirit of the giant sequoia shown to the right, a symbol of resiliency and robustness. And so to conclude, for those early-stage researchers, you might consider identifying a compatible complement and pairing up to strategically share risks and rewards. And for everyone else in general, identify a problem that can be strategically tackled by a cross-disciplinary collaboration and tackle it. Thank you again to the organizers of this workshop for inviting me today, and thank you all for your attention.